Well, as we talk politics this year, we'll also be talking security alongside because, as I always like to remind us, the president did say that security is a front burner issue, and that was in his January 1st statement to all of us Nigerians, at least those who are also resident here in Nigeria as well. So, what progress have we made with regards to security, coming from where we were coming from in 2021, and even the reports we've already gotten from certain communities in 2022? High on that list is Zamfara. We also have heard from Niger. Over the weekend, we understand that there was some trouble in Kaduna as well, but some quiet seems to have returned to many parts of the northwest of the country. But what progress have we made? And if we've made progress, how can we sustain it? Let's talk to Mr. Ibrahim Modibo, who is a former member, Presidential Campaign Council of the APC. You're welcome to our studios this morning.
Thank you very much, Margaret. Good morning, Nigeria. Mr.
Kasim Afegwa is also here with us as a former member of the PDP Presidential Campaign Council. You're welcome as well.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Well, gentlemen, let's look at I don't know what you will make of your assessment of our current security situation coming from 2021. We know just how turbulent that year was for us with regards to security. The president says we're not going to take our eyes off the ball in 2022, and it's extremely important as we go into 2023. For you, Mr. Modibo, how would you assess just how whether or not we've made progress with regards to security?
Thank you very much, Margwe. I'm happy to be here with my good friend, Kasim Afegwa, a long-time political ally, to discuss this issue of great fundamental importance. In his patriotic and nationalistic intervention in the process of good governance, Mr. President, right from the onset, has made some cardinal tripodal structure, so to say, of the issues he wants to tackle head-on. One of them is security. Fix the economy, tame insecurity, and also fight anti-corruption. Fight corruption. Now, if you look at the issue of security, has attracted a front burner within the, poverty of this government, whether we like it or not. In the last 10 years or in the last 6 years or so, Mr. President has spent almost about 10 trillion naira in terms of provision of, security apparatus for our security. This is a man that believes that Nigeria should be governed with human face. Nigeria should be governed, people should have peace and tranquility for peace, progress, and prosperity to prosper.
So that is his belief. But the question is, how is that translating to the actual security that people feel? We know that it's been a very tough one, especially in the northwest of the country. I know, speaking with the president at the beginning of this year, he acknowledged that, yeah, there's been some progress made in the northeast, but he also acknowledged that there are big problems in the northwest, which we're now trying to confront. The track which we saw there, which was played before coming to our studios, was that of the vice president when he went to visit Katsina on a condolence visit. And he was there assuring people that peace will soon return to many communities that have been terrorized. So there is some acknowledgement that things are not yet well, but, so despite his good intentions, it doesn't seem to have translated yet into actual peace and security that people can feel.
It is a noted fact that even the president himself acknowledges the fact there are challenges. Security is a big issue, and there are challenges. These are some of these issues should have been tackled a long time ago, but with what is happening at the moment, the president inherited most of these things, and they are, cascading into this administration. He has spent a lot in terms of provision of security apparatus. Look at the...
He inherited the problem in the northwest?
No. Of course, security issue had been there right from inception of this democratic thing. Look at the northeast, Boko Haram. By then, it spiraled to the northwest, but only in some few areas where we've seen people wrestling cattle and then picking people, but not in this, not in this large-scale occupants of these terrorists. All we're saying, the president has done well by at least allocating resources for defense and security. He has encouraged the security men and women, especially the military, by their rapid promotions, and then also meeting to the yearnings and aspirations of their security needs. Look at the Tucanos that have been bought. Look at the weapons that have been bought. Is it the president that Nigerians want him now to go and fight on his own? He has done that before when he was a Jos in third division in Jos, when he drove bandits from Borno State right into Chad.
But for
so
you,
now,
I mean,
for now,
yes.
Mwakwe, you see, we have to commend also our security men. To be candid, they've been doing well, especially within the fringes of the Northeast. You know, looking at the issue of Sambisa Forest and also Boko Haram. But the major challenge now is the Northwest, especially Zamfara, Sokoto. He himself admitted, and everybody knows, that there are serious challenges that has to do with security in this country. And therefore, whether we like it or not, it is a noted fact that there are challenges. But these are challenges that I think are
How would you say, well, that's what I wanted to ask you. I mean, that's precisely what I'm asking you. You know, how would you say that we've made progress with these challenges? Have you seen us confronting it headlong?
Oh, yes.
And tackling it as we ought to?
Oh, yes. You know, with the commitment of Mr. President saying that, look, well, you know, although it has become more of a national anthem, most times when there is any major skirmish or major pitfall in terms of security networking, the president is always giving assurance, and it's very commendable, because you have to assure your citizens that, look, you are doing something. And I strongly believe... Do
you feel assured?
Yes, I feel assured in the sense that the security, if you look at the security situation, recently, if going by what is happening within the Northwest, you will agree with me, Magwe, that you know, the police and the military have been able to infiltrate, especially in Zamfara and Sokoto. They've gone there. The major issue now is Niger. If you look at the Niger, because of the expanse of land, it's a country of its own. Niger State can accommodate about 2 or 3 West African countries. So it is so large, and it is, you know, if you look at the flora and fauna, this is a state that has been surrounded by a lot of vegetations in terms of trees, network of trees, and then rocks and what have you. So it is a good hiding place for some of these bandits and terrorists. And therefore, what the Nigerian military need to do is to invest in technology. We have to. If somebody will come and kidnap a person and will take him into a forest, without us using technology to find out where the person is, then it becomes a problem. Okay. And that is the major concern now. Not even the Tucanos. The Tucanos are here. But how have they been effectively used? If they are being used, I think we are making progress. To be candid, the military must be commended. We are making progress, but I think there's more that needs to be done.
Okay, let me come to you, Mr. Fegboa, even though we just have maybe about a minute or two before we go to break. I do not know, for security agents, they always say that, you know, the criminals can be wrong. I mean, all they have to do is be right once. They have to be right all of the time. If the criminals are right once, it would seem that they have not been doing anything. From what you can see, from your own assessment of how we've tackled our security challenges so far, how much progress would you say that we've made?
Well, let me say that the problem of insecurity in Nigeria is peculiar to the case of one of my friends, my political friends, who is a perennial aspirant in Edo State, Kenny Maswagbon. Every time election is coming, he prepares, buy rice and share to people, expecting that he will get results. Doing the same thing over and over again on an issue. It is the same way that the government of the day has been doing the same thing, expecting different results. You have to think outside the box to be able to tackle the issue of insecurity. And how do I mean? It is not just about investing resources, just like he said. How much of resources have you invested, and how much of monitoring to ensure that those resources are actually meant for the purpose they were released? Don't forget that we have seen in this country where there are protests of non-payment of allowances. We have seen people, police and all of that, demonstrating in Maiduguri and elsewhere. You see, meetings are held all the time, behind closed doors. When those doors are open, what do we get as a citizenry, as a fallout of those meetings? So I'm saying that I think we have a very novel, war on our hands. Novel in the sense that the Nigerian police were not trained for this, or the Nigerian military are confused about this, because it's like an ad hoc approach. You hear pockets of attack here, you hear attack here, and they just go. There has to be a methodical, planned, sustained, and deliberate effort to ensure that you sustain the fight. You may have your casualties figure high at some point, but it will diminish. How much of conversations are going on between president and some of these people? What is the body language of the
people?
The bandits. Because we had Gumi, a Nigerian cleric, who was going around meeting these people, these bandits. That means they have forwarding address.
We'll come to that, to the strategies that have been employed so far when we come back from this break. Please stay with us. We're taking on the issue of security here on Sunrise Daily, and we have with us Mr. Kasim Afebwa and Mr. Ibrahim Modibo, who's a former member of the presidential campaign of the APC. Well, gentlemen, you were just talking to Mr. Afebwa, you're talking about strategies and how we need to think outside the box. And you talked about how the bandits, now known as terrorists in the Northwest, have a forwarding address. Some people will say that, that method was employed, that all manner of methods have been employed. In the Northeast, for instance, there's a safe corridor program for former terrorists who have laid down their arms. There's a safe corridor under which they could be converts, and we will, how will I put it now? There's a word they use, de-radicalize them, and then have them back into society. That is a program that is currently ongoing. In the Northeast, I beg your pardon, in the Northwest of the country, the state governments, because fighting insecurity is not just the problem of the federal government. The state governments have also been very well involved. We saw a few state governments come up with an amnesty program. In Zamfara State, we saw that. In Katsina State, we saw that. It was very controversial at the time, and it would seem that the state governors now regret going down that route of granting them amnesty. So it looks like we've thrown quite a bit of things at this problem in the Northwest, yet it's not yet given way. When you talk about thinking outside the box, was that one of the things you're thinking about, amnesty for them?
Well, you see, the point is, to a large extent, I'm not seeing coordination between the government of the day, whether state government, federal government, with the rural communities that are involved in this, in terms of intelligence gathering and using those intelligence information, to take action that will be decisive on these bandits. The point is, there was a time that Sheikh Gumi was going around meeting bandits and their heads. Yes. It means that there is a line of communication. How much of that the government exploited, so that they will be able to at least get a thinking into the mindset of a typical bandit. The cleric got tired at some point, I say he was pulling out. I didn't hear of any kind of, robust engagement with the cleric with respect to getting information about these people's operations.
Isn't this about the economy? Because so far so good. What we got out of that conversation, and I stand corrected on this issue, was that these people had suffered for quite a while. These people who had now become bandits, their own cattle had been rustled. They claimed that there was, they had largely been ignored by the Nigerian state, etc., etc. And so they now took to crime. But it would seem that they have now found that crime was profitable. So that no matter what it would seem that the government was going to do, they would, agree on one hand, but if it was not yielding much profit anymore, they went back to what they had originally known.
We're still saying the same thing. You see, economy, any factors that are responsible for this, it is the responsibility of the federal government to think outside the box and create platforms where you can address some of these issues. The economy you're talking about, how much of investment has the federal government put into education of the typical youth in the north who is roaming the forest? Or this? When you have a government and a president that was making case for grousing routes in a 21st century world rather than ranching, there's a huge problem. Why do you expose your youth to be taking cows from the north to the south in the first instance? That youth ought to be in the classroom to gain knowledge that will make him behave as a civilized citizen of the country. But here you are, rather than say, let's move forward, the president will be talking about 1960s grazing routes in a new world. So we're having, you know, a contest of two wars here. The wars of the grazing routes that is already primordial, and the new world that talks about ranching and maybe plantation agriculture and what have you. So if you want to improve or impart on the well-being of these people, you need to sit back and say, come, let's think outside the box. You display that you are producing rice, you are doing this, you are that. How much of these people are you be able to engage in all the process? Because the forests have become unsafe. So rather than just throwing bombs, bayonets, and all of you, and guns and bullets, I would prefer that you throw biro and writing materials to all these youths. And there has to be a deliberate and sustained effort. It is not ad hoc. Don't display ad hocism in all of this. You have to sustain an effort and ensure that the Almajiri schools that were introduced, where are they today?
I was just going to ask Mr. Modibo, you know, what he thinks of your suggestion. I don't know what you make of Mr. Figwa's suggestion in terms of throwing biros and books at, you know, at the problem. He thinks that that's one of the things that we need to do. What are your thoughts on that?
You see, the issues are multicultural and multidimensional. Multicultural in the sense that if you look at the problems associated with this banditry and what have you, here are a people that since the dawn of history, they've not been bothered for in terms of government attachment to them, in providing social infrastructure, giving them schools, giving them education, and even taking care of their well-being. And culturally, these are people that are attached to their cows. It is part of their lives. It's a normative structure where they grow up, right from the dawn of history, they grow up to old age and die. Without government, but coincidentally, these are people that are always paying taxes to the government. But the government has not been forthcoming in terms of meeting their yearning aspirations. So if you look at the issue of poverty, it's attracting a front burner in all these issues. These are people that have been accustomed to a lifestyle, nomadic lifestyle, where they have their cows. And suddenly some people come and rustle it.
Do you think that the stance which you've had towards the issue, because we know that this issue of nomadic education, it didn't come up today. There are people who have, you know, thought about it and said, look, perhaps we need to take education to nomads, you know, and we have to move along with them because this is their culture, this is their lifestyle. While we also find solutions, we've heard of how there have been, is it grazing settlements? I'm trying to remember the actual word now.
The Ruga.
Yeah, Ruga is like a word that just came up again, but we know that they were...
No, Ruga is an ancient name, you know.
They came up, I'm trying to find a word that's less controversial. But let me say grazing settlements for not being able to find that actual word now, that have not been taken over. They have not been used according to the plan that they had for those settlements. But this is where we currently are. And the people who, you know, graze cattle have been affected by cattle rustlers. In many instances, entire villages have been razed down. You know, their cattle have been rustled, their lives have been taken. And the people who are doing it, it would seem that, you know, it's now a new economy for them. They don't see any other thing that's going to give them as much money as they would have made if they were just to raise cattle alone. How do you think we can begin to change mindset, even though, yes, the federal government has taken a hard stance, which is now to declare the bandits terrorists so that there can be, you know, there can be some demarcation in terms of the treatment of these people. But do you think that is enough?
You see, the plan of the government, as good as it was, has not been able to achieve much successes. Why? For very obvious reasons. One, Magwe, the nomadic education program just started in Ruga and ended in Ruga. Was there any plan after primary school the next step is secondary school. After secondary school, the next step is university. Has there been any plan? There hasn't been. So it was only to go and teach them ABC and just think, and sing songs, and then 1, 2, 3, that's all. There hasn't been this concrete plan of government to attract education to these people so that they reach the highest peak or the peak of their academic callings.
So in that respect,
yeah, you find out that the whole thing ended at that pedestrian level. And now coming up, when you're talking about, these Fulani people that, in fact, it is even a crime now to be a Fulani man in Nigeria. We're in danger. Because anywhere you go, they associate you as a terrorist. And it's very unfortunate. And seeing to the fact that, look, these people have had their cattle being rustled, and now they've gone into this issue of armed banditry and terrorism or kidnapping. It is a very sad commentary. In the culture, genealogy, if you look at the culture of the Fulani people with high respect, dignity, and cultural values. The Fulani man has never been known to be a thief. No, could he have been a beggar? No Fulani man that begs, and no Fulani man that steals in those days. But now it has become a profile. Fulani people have been profiled. Wherever they go, they'll say, look, this guy is a bandit, he's a kidnapper. And it's a very sad commentary. But how do we check it? The only thing that the government should do is to look inwards, try to find solutions, provide solutions to some of the problems.
Is the solutions we're talking about?
Yes, the solution is...
We're asking whether the solutions that government has proffered so far so good, how effective have they been?
Which are the solutions, Mark? What are the solutions? Up to now, as it is today, there hasn't been any concrete solution that is mapped out for these people. Their cattle have been rustled, their villages have been razed. Wherever they are, they've been seen as, they've been declared persona non grata. Where do you want these people to go? And in the whole of sub-Saharan Africa, the Katu Fulani or the Fulani people occupy almost all the countries of Sub-Saharan Africa.
You know what?
There's nowhere you go, you don't find
In
Fulani.
the conversation that we had with the president in January this year,
yes,
talking about the Northwest specifically, as I did highlight earlier, he said that in the Northeast that they have made significant progress. But in the Northwest, he says is a problem that he doesn't understand, that it is Fulani people fighting Fulani people. Fulani, he said, brothers of people of the same ethnic group stealing their own brothers' cattle, dealing a very strong hand to their own brothers. He doesn't understand it. When you now say that Fulani people have been profiled, the question is, who is profiling Fulani people?
In the Northwest.
If in the Northwest of the country, yes, where this problem, because you talked about Sokoto, you've talked about Zamfara.
Yes.
These are largely places inhabited by Fulani people.
No, you see,
and they have suffered from the hands of fellow Fulanis.
Our geography, the location of this area, does not suggest that it is Fulani against Fulani. No. The dividing line between the Hausa and the Fulani is very thin. So you will not be able to remove the chaff from the grains by way of just looking at the people like that. They are Hausas. Hausas are predominantly
I'm not
farmers.
The one who said it.
No.
It is the president who said it.
I'm only explaining things to you. Hausas are predominantly farmers. They farm. That is crop production. While the Fulani people take care of farming based on their cattle rearing. So there are two different things. There are areas where you find that the Hausa people that are farming will go and rustle the cattle of the Fulanis and run away with them. So those Fulanis will also follow them and kill them in their own villages.
Are
so
these things done? Is it that our crime, the crime that is committed now, is it selective based on ethnicity?
No, sometimes.
In the northeast of the country where we have fought terrorism now for how long? The people who have been terrorists, have they looked upon the people whom they have attacked as saying, these people are of our ethnic stock, we shouldn't attack them in the manner? Haven't they just gone ahead to just kill them? Are we really on the right trajectory when we continue to look at this from an ethnic profile? From an ethnic prism, so to speak.
The issue of Boko Haram in the Northeast, where I come from, Mamkwe, is purely religious, or overzealous in terms of religious affairs. But that of the Northwest is purely economic. They are just terrorists, they are bandits that want to steal. They kill, they steal. That is the modus operandi. But in the Northeast, It is purely a religious issue. So they don't select, there's no selection. But in Northwest, based on my study, it proves, Markway, that most of these banditry attacks and what have you, they are done for economic reasons, either to collect monies or for vengeance of this group coming to kill my people, and me too. I'll just organize some this to go and revenge. So it is something that has to do with. It's not about religion. It is about pure economic issue. It is stealing.
Let me take this to Lagos now. I understand my colleague has a question or two for you. Ayo.
Well, thank you, Malkwe. I just wanted to ask the two gentlemen with you there, what role the traditional rulers and religious leaders could have played in this whole melee. Let me begin with you, Mr. Fegwa. You remember recently the Vice President, along with a couple of governors, have re-emphasized the need to reactivate the role for traditional institutions in the fight against insecurity. Some of the issues raised by Mr. Modibo there would probably have been resolved if those issues could be taken from the angle of traditional rulers, don't you think?
Yeah, very well so. You see, that's why I said there are no useful conversations going on. There are no platforms by government to engage some of these people. The traditional rulers, I remember telling, in Castina, was telling the vice president that both himself and his people, that they can't sleep with their two eyes closed. That's to tell you how
My apologies,
how bad
isn't that a role for governors specifically, and not necessarily the federal government?
It's a symbiotic relationship kind of thing. It should be. That's why I said earlier on that there are no coordinations. You see, it got to a point that even governors were entering the forest to go and negotiate with bandits. There, you see bandits carrying AK-47 and all that. You begin to wonder how they got access to these leather weapons. You see our own military soldiers in camouflage uniform and all of that standing beside the governor taking pictures with bandits. So you have inadvertently promoted the art to be something of a heroic exploit, kind of. When these bandits who have never seen themselves in pictures on television and all of that, seeing that they are standing with the governor of a state and all of that, and they are taking pictures and what have you. So my point is, there was a time they said the borders are closed. How are these people getting access to food, number one? Secondly, leather weapons. Every now and then you see the weapons they're even carrying appear more sophisticated than the ones that our military and police are carrying. So it baffles one that I think there's too much of layback. You can say that the military are trying, they are fighting the soldiers and all of you, but how much of upkeep do you even give the soldiers who are fighting? How much of allowances do you provide for them? How much of care do you give them? I saw a visual sometime when the governor of Zamfara State was bringing out wads of naira to give soldiers who were on duty and all that. They were shouting and they were hailing. That kind of scenario. There has to be a methodical, planned, sustained, and deliberate effort. I keep saying this because you have to have a plan that you marshal. The Air Force, the Army, and all other security agencies have to build a synergy, some kind of synergy, coordination. If you throw your bombs, there should be a troop down to mop up the remnants. But how much of that are we seeing? We don't see. In fact, there were more or less some kind of infighting between all these sister agencies and what have you before now. Thank God this new thinking, there seems to be some difference. But it is not just about throwing bombs. There has to be a way to mop up those remnants when the bombs have been thrown. So okay. My point is, government at both federal and the state level must work together, must build a synergy to ensure that the right things are done. If you have a program, you monitor that program to the end. There are no schools.
Well, just a second, Mr. Fegwa. We're running out of time. Let me ask the same question of Mr. Modibo now, especially against the background of some of the things that you've talked about when you talked about some ethnic group in Nigeria being profiled. What responsibility would you say should be given now going forward to the traditional rulers, especially of those classes and groups of people that you talked about?
You see, it is very unfortunate that within the confines of our new democratic culture, we've not been able to imbibe or bring forth the traditional institutions. They are part and parcel of governance, especially in the days gone by. Recall during the colonial period, they played a very fundamental role. During the independence and post-independence, they also played fundamental roles because they are the fathers of the nation. If the traditional rulers, especially when we were growing up in the 60s, going to the 70s, you find out that the traditional rulers, they know the people in the area. They are the arbiters of law and culture in the area. So if there's any strange people, or if there are strange people that come to their area, they will know. And therefore, they are highly respected, highly revered. And therefore, there is the need for them to be brought into the administrative structure of governance. Democracy is government, it's participatory government. And therefore, why are we skimming traditional rulers out of governance? That creates a very big, it creates a very big conduit pipe for crime and criminality. The traditional institution as it is should come on board and should be offering advice to the government, meaningful advice, and also participating. If they do that, I strongly believe that in terms of tackling security, they have a lot to advise the government on the way to go about it. But then the onus rests on the security and also on governance. If Mr. President has been able to supply all the much needed funds for these people to go and fight these bandits, I've seen no reason why by today we wouldn't have captured or, totally eliminated banditry and terrorism in Nigeria.
I was just going to tell you, Mr. Modibo, that on the issue of traditional rulers, you and the president are on the same page. He does believe that there should be a bigger role for traditional rulers to play, especially
it's not about believing.
In the light of security.
It's about starting the process.
Exactly. So there were questions as to what we've done about the belief. But we have to thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the program this morning. Mr. Ibrahim Modibo is a former member, Presidential Campaign Council of the APC, and Mr. Kasim Afegbua is also a former member, PDP Presidential Campaign Council. And
I'm happy Modibo spoke like an opposition. Very nice.
Like
I like
an
you to be
opposition.
honest. Very honest.
Well, that's what we'll have to leave it today.